Okay, guys, what we're going to talk about today are the different types of triangles. Alright. Um, okay, so you guys have been, about the different congruence marks, so on and so forth, but now let's actually talk about um, two very special type of triangles. And one is called the isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle, okay, what it means is that you have two congruent sides. Because you have two congruent sides, their opposite angles are also congruent. Okay, so if I had something like this, if this angle was, if we knew that this was isosceles by these little two tick marks, then we can say if this is 56, this is also 56. Okay, or if you got a triangle something like this, okay, where you have two congruent angles like this, you can actually say that these two sides are also congruent. So if you saw these two angles markings were congruent, and you saw like 6 on this side, well, you know that this side would also have to be 6. So that's the concept of what isosceles is that it has two base angles that are the same and two side angles that are the same. So when you get into something like this, let's say I say this is 3x and this is 66, I ask you to solve for x. Well, what do we know? We know the two base angles are congruent. So if we know that this is 66, we know also that this has to equal 66. So what we do is you take 3x and you set it equal to 66. Because they're congruent, their measurements equal each other. So from there you would just solve for x. And you get x equals 22. Basic enough, right? Now sometimes it's going to ask you for the angle up here. So let's say I gave you said this is that, and I said this is 44. Okay? So this top part is 44. Well, what we know about isosceles triangles is that the two base angles are congruent. Okay, and we know all triangles add up to 180. So if you had this angle up here, this is what you'd have to do. You'd figure this out. Take 180 minus 44. Okay, that's going to give you 136. Okay. Now, to get these two base angles down here, you got to think about this. So, if they're the same number, that means that both of them add up to equal this, but since they're the same number, is essentially you're just taking this number and you're dividing it by 2. Okay, and when you do that, you get 50 plus 15, so 68. Okay, so both these angles down here are 68. So if you know this angle up here, you know both these numbers down here are 68. And vice versa. If you're given one of these numbers, you can figure out this number by just doubling this. So let's say I gave you something like this. Say you had 36 down here. And I told you to find this thing up here and called it y. Well, first you'd have to figure out, okay, so I know all triangles add up to 180. I know that this angle is also 36. So what I would do is I'd take 180 minus the angles I know. I know this one's 36, I know this one's 36. When you did that, you would end up with 108. So your last remaining angle would be 108, so like y would equal 108. That's isosceles triangles. Then you also have what's known as equilateral triangles. Okay. So, equilateral triangles are almost like isosceles, except for instead of just two sides being congruent, all sides are congruent. And because all sides are congruent, this is what we can figure out. If it's isosceles, that means all three sides are congruent. Also, that means all three angles are congruent. So isosceles triangles only can have one measurement, and not isosceles, equilateral triangles can only have one measurement of an angle. And that angle is 60 degrees. So, if it is isosceles, it all the angles had to be 60 degrees. I mean, isosceles, equilateral, all the angles had to be 60 degrees. Okay, so when you get to something like this, becomes apparent what you need to do. Okay, so let's say I give you 34 right here. Okay, so we know this is an isosceles triangle. Because we know it's an isosceles triangle, we know that all of these angles are 60. Okay, now we have to go back to what we remember from yesterday. When you have two lines that intersect, okay, it creates vertical angles. And remember, vertical angles are congruent. So if this one's 60, this one would also be 60. Okay, so now we've got two of the three angles that we need. So think about this. The whole thing is what? Well, it is 180 is what the whole triangle should be. So let's subtract away what we already know to figure out what we need to know. So 180 minus 60 minus 34. When we did that, we would get, this would be 120 minus 34, which would equal 86. 96, my bad. 96. So if I was asking what this x was, it'd be 96. Okay, let me show you one more example like this. So once again, let's say we had something like this. This is isosceles, and I gave you, I don't know, 34 down, 82 down here. Okay. Well, because we know this isosceles, you know all the triangles are congruent. These two lines cross, so you know that this is 60, and so that its vertical angle, which is this one right here, would also have to be 60. And you would still take 180 minus 60 minus 82, do that whole shebang, and you would end up getting 38. No, I was right the first time up here. This is 86. Sorry. It should be 86. But yeah. That's all the data behind isosceles triangles and equilateral triangles. Is that it's just the difference between, it's just isosceles, opposites, equilaterals. You have three congruent sides. So what you guys are going to be doing now is you're going to be doing the triangle review with both the equilateral and the isosceles triangles on there. Ask questions if you need to. Thank you.